Greetings, fellow armchair Imagineers. Tiki here, and welcome to a new event that combines the best elements of two of our favorite seasons. The nostalgia of watching movies on a summer day meets the horror and B-movie scares of Hallows Eve. So grab your creepy crawlies and book a tour of the Mystery Shack. We've got a selection of offerings more offbeat than Elvis in a retirement home fighting a mummy. It's a selection that'll have you screaming, "Oh my God!" Let the SummerWeen festivities begin! All right, folks, welcome to the second installment of SummerWeen 2020. And tonight we're discussing the B-movie classic from 2002. Wait, what? Eight-Legged Freaks with Jacob Gulliver. How you doing, Jacob?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me back on. This is it's going to be fun.
Of course. Now, Jacob, you were the one that suggested Eight-Legged Freaks, and I gotta tell you, this is a movie that I don't think I have thought about since it came out in theaters.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, essentially, like, at that age in my life, I was, late teens, and I was thinking, like, oh, let's have bad movie nights and watch stuff, and that looked like a prime candidate, but, like, when we put it in a rotation of movies to watch, everybody was like, this movie is just kind of enjoyable. It is dumb, but like they realized that, and like they're leaning into it. So yeah, it's kind of been one. It's not like my favorite movie ever, but it's still pretty enjoyable.
Going back to it was a really fun nostalgia trip, and I really do think that this one, it kind of gets lost in the shuffle, man. It really does. It's like no one really ever talks about this movie, and we're going to change that.
Yeah.
So yeah, man, I do remember this movie coming out. Of course, the trailer, like, "Get back, you eight-legged freaks," and then just kind of the B-movie quality of it all that was advertised to us. It was something that I feel like this was kind of like my first exposure to that kind of stuff, before I went back and watched the 50s B movies that this was inspired from. This was really, I feel like it could be a lot of people's exposure. It is really the first modern day, one of the only modern day, like, B movie giant monster movies that I can think of that's not just like a fucking Legendary Pictures Godzilla movie.
Right, yeah. And I think, they definitely wanted to play, homage to those sorts of movies that you're talking about. But they also wanted to kind of do their own thing. There's, shades of Tremors in what they're doing. There's, shades of, more modern action adventure type stuff too. There's shades of, the zombie movies of the 70s and the 80s in here too, with like escaping to the mall and like, gathering up weapons and stuff like that. It's clearly a movie that knows its roots and isn't afraid to flex those, and get a little silly with it.
And then, Jacob, it also has people on motorbikes being chased by giant spiders, which I think is the most early 2000s thing ever. So it's also a product of its time.
Yeah, dirt bikes are pretty great. You can see the clear product integration there. Everybody's got that O logo on their shirt. And
I think the dirt bikes are like absolutely the best scene in the movie.
Yeah, the that feels like a producer decision to me. Just like, well, like if we put these guys in there, they're gonna give us some more money. So put in.
No, I hear you. It reeks of cross promotion for sure. Yeah. I'm just saying, like, I feel like it's the peak of the movie in terms of just like ridiculous decision making and just, like, B-movie goodness. It's like I feel like that moment in the movie kind of wraps up everything that I like about the movie in terms of like cheesy B-movie stuff, and then also just the cheesy corporate synergy of the early 2000s.
Right. Yeah.
All right. So where do you want to start with this discussion?
Maybe discuss like the plot first, or we could jump to like performances and characterizations. That could be fun too. I'm open to all kinds of ideas, really.
Okay, well, starting with the character sounds like a good idea. I mean, the plot is pretty simple. It's like We have a guy who's farming spiders, a very eccentric guy, by the way.
Yeah.
Let's see. I believe he's a pretty famous '80s actor, right? You know more about him than I would. Tom Noonan.
I actually don't.
Really?
But I could certainly look him up and pull a list here.
He's got some credits that I think you would know him for. He was in Manhunter. He was Frankenstein's monster in Monster Squad. He was Kane in RoboCop 2.
Gotcha.
I think you know his face. Yeah, I think you know his face if you saw him in other things.
Sure.
One of the things that he's uncredited in this movie. So, but yeah, he plays the eccentric spider farmer Joshua. And I gotta tell you, man, Joshua is just like a total creep.
Absolutely. I completely agree with you on the character that the kid should not be hanging out with him.
No. And it's just, I mean, there's just so many things wrong with this guy. First of all, he's kind of like a Willard character, but with spiders instead of rats. So there's that going on. And then just the fact that he's like so happy-go-lucky to hang out with this little kid and show him his bug collection. There's a lot of
right.
There's a lot of weird things going on here with this Joshua character.
Right. Very strange.
So, anyways, yeah.
Maybe you have to be a little weird to be an entomologist. Not there's anything wrong with that, but maybe you just get in a weird headspace sometimes.
Sure. So, long story short, the spiders eat radioactive waste, and what do you know? They all turn giant, and they start attacking the town. And the owner of the mine, Chris is like the son of the owner of the mine, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so he has to lead all the people back into the mines, and yada 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 stuff happens. I don't really think the plot is that important in this movie.
Yeah.
All right, so let's talk about the characters. So first of all, David Arquette, who has just disappeared from humanity in recent years. What's he doing now? He's playing Chris McCormick. And I don't know, man. What do you think of him? I feel like he feels like in this movie he feels like a very, very rough prototype of what the Chris Pratt brand of action hero would eventually become.
Yeah, I can kind of see that idea, and I definitely think that's kind of in the right space. He definitely feels like, leading man light in a lot of ways.
Mm-hmm.
Like he's not like the ultra handsome, ultra sculpted guy, but he still has, some of that charisma. And I think they made a good choice in casting him in the sense that he feels like he does kind of belong in this small town.
Yeah, totally.
Even if he's not like even if he can't do the Chris Pratt or Nick Offerman, small town hospitality style.
Well, I feel like he does feel like a person who came from a small town and then left that small town. And that's exactly what the character is.
Yeah.
So, because I feel like David Arquette, I don't even really remember most of his movies, but I feel like the charm of him was kind of like that everyman quality that he had.
Yeah.
Back when he was actually making stuff.
I do like that he's charismatic, but also has trouble talking to the girl and stuff, and he's not he doesn't have the perfect line for every moment. He's just he's dedicated to doing what is in front of him, but he's not always perfect every time. I think that adds to the character for me.
All right, and that leads us to Sheriff Sam Parker. I think she's okay. I don't really get much of a strong characterization out of her one way or another. Mm-hmm. Just kind of a common love interest, but she happens to be a sheriff, so she does have a few moments where she gets to kick some ass, and she does. I think my favorite scene with her is when she's trying to get that radio broadcast out.
Yeah.
Not much else there.
I do like that. She's not willing to get her hands dirty and is, up in everybody's business when there's, problems and everything. That's valuable. But she's also not played as like a typical sexy lead in these sorts of
Yeah,
movies.
yeah. Right,
Like,
yeah.
they don't have her in like, the deep revealing cut shirts and stuff like that. And she's not like, unrealistically, makeup levels and things like that. She feels like a real person.
She does.
So yeah, I appreciate that aspect.
Also, it's a nice touch that the love interest is a single mom. That's something you don't usually see in Hollywood.
Yeah.
So let's get to the kids. Do you want to talk about the plot relevant one, or do you want to talk about the famous one?
Yeah, I mean, there's some questions there for sure. I do think that it's nice that they have the kids be involved and they're doing stuff for the most part. Um, the let's talk about Scarlett first, just so we can get it out of the way, or on that topic.
So yeah, Scarlett
Yeah.
Johansson's in this movie, and it completely took me off guard. I was like, wait a minute.
Yeah,
It throws you off too, because it's like she's got that deep Scarlett Johansson voice, and she's totally like a teenage girl. It's so odd. I mean, I knew she was a child actress back in the day, but I don't know, just seeing her there and not expecting her to be there, it was like whiplash, man.
Yeah,
Whiplash,
I definitely think her
the Iron Man villain in the first MCU movie she appeared in. Ha, 6 degrees of separation. I'm sorry.
That's fun. Yeah, and I mean, she's obviously ultra famous now for the her work in the Marvel movies, but she did a fair amount of work before the Marvel movies came out, and I definitely think that they play the character as pretty stereotypical as far as like teenage daughter characters go, but she also like switches to family side pretty quickly once shit pops off and the spiders show up, and she's ready to defend and get on board with everything, which is something that doesn't necessarily happen for all of those characters. Her performance is good. Her her part is maybe a little underwritten, but and you're right, a lot of the scenes with her are not really relevant to the plot until she starts getting like captured by spiders.
I think she does one important thing, which is like lead the sick people and the kids to safety.
Yeah.
That's about it. So hey, props for doing something.
Yep.
You know what's terrifying, Jacob? I'm thinking, I'm like doing the math in my head, and like this is not that many years out from Lost in Translation, which is the movie where she really blows up.
Yeah. That's true.
All right. So yeah, the other kid, Mike. Let's see. So Mike, what I like about Mike, Jacob, is that he kind of makes this movie sort of feel like a Goosebumps movie in the first act.
Yeah. It's a great comparison. Exactly.
Yeah. Because of specifically the whole kind of like tongue-in-cheek kind of like, oh, no one ever believes the kid. Like that's totally something out of Goosebumps. It's totally a Goosebumps plot.
Yeah, and are you afraid of the dark kind of characterization?
And hell, speaking of Goosebumps, I could totally see the Joshua character fitting right in line with like the eccentric Goosebumps adult characters.
Oh yeah. I also like there's a nice touch where you can see him watching sci-fi movies on the Sci-Fi Channel. When you go to his room for the first time, when you get to see that, so like the director clearly knows like the audience that they're going for, and is pointing at that and saying, "This kid is you." If you watch the Sci-Fi Channel, this kid is gonna be your guy. Which as a teenager, I was like, yes, thank you for doing that. This is good. And he is like, there's a tough line to walk with like, kid performances between, kids who are dedicated and like passionate about something and kids who are absolutely too annoying to be anything. And that line is treaded very carefully here, where like, there's a couple places where he's like mildly annoying, but his performance really comes off mostly as passionate rather than like, entitled or like, a whiny little kid. So that that feels good for me because so many times it's pushed too far to the other side.
Oh yeah.
He definitely feels like he knows what he's talking about, and his opinion does end up getting valued, even if it's not immediately.
Right, but I do like the reveal where it's like, oh my god, that's not a piece of cactus.
Yeah.
And by the way, let's just shout it out right now. This movie, I don't think when the spiders are in group shots, I don't think it looks great. But I feel like shots of individual spiders, whether it be CGI or especially when we do the practical effects with the legs, those, oh my god, those still hold up wonderfully.
Yeah. I feel like when they do the CGI, again, they're leaning into that like goofier side. Like they have them like leaping around and doing.
Yeah, sure.
There's that scene where the one spider like repeatedly punches the guy in the face and stuff. Like
we get the sound effect.
Yeah. And, like there's that like weird, orchestral version of Itsy Bitsy Spider.
Oh god,
comes up several times in the process. So, I mean, the CGI does get goofy in places. For me, it only just like it adds to the effect. I don't care how goofy it is. I just like what's happening.
And I mean, to be fair, a movie called Eight-Legged Freaks is not going to be like they're not aiming to make it look like a masterpiece of visual effects. I'm sure they're not.
Yeah.
But credit where credit's due. I do think that the practical effects with the legs poking out of the different walls and everything, that is still stuff that holds up. It makes me wish that more movies would use simple practical effects like that.
Mm-hmm.
All right. I think the only other really notable character to mention is Harlan Griffith, who's the kind of the Wolfman Jack equivalent for the movie, except he's kind of the conspiracy theorist.
Yeah.
And I gotta say, he's probably the most memorable. He's probably the thing I remember the most about this movie, like looking back on it, because I was like, oh yeah, we did have this conspiracy theory guy who was always going on about the anal probes and and the whole running joke about the spiders being aliens and stuff. Like it kind of flooded back to me as soon as I saw him in the opening sequence.
Yeah, and like the fact that they know how to to get him on their side by just saying, okay, they're Martian spiders.
Right. The spiders from Mars, right?
Yeah. When you finally get into the, that's how you deal with a conspiracy theorist who won't listen to any logic, is like make their logic work.
Right.
It's like trying to talk to a flat earther, It's fucking crazy. But his characterization is still like very compelling. He's clearly giving a lot of himself physically to the role in terms of body language and like delivery, and that's something that does become memorable in a lot of cases. Sometimes it works out really well, but there's other times when it could become problematic. This guy did great. There's no problematic content other than just like weirdo stuff that he's saying, but whatever.
Let's see. And I say the Wolfman Jack comparison not because like Wolfman Jack was a conspiracy theorist, like obviously he was a much different DJ, but because I feel like they do the same thing that they kind of do in American Graffiti, where the DJ is a character in the movie and also the character that diegetically is everyone in the town is listening to.
Right.
And I like that everyone in the town is listening to this guy and that he's got a fan base and everyone in this town is kind of a conspiracy nut. I enjoy that element of the movie.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it says something about the quality of the townspeople.
Right. So speaking of the townspeople, are there any ones in particular you want to go over? This is like in a typical monster movie, we have a big cast of characters that don't really get a chance to shine, but they're all kind of just there. The mayor
is pretty enjoyable. I think Wade is the name of the character. Is that right?
I think so. Yeah, the mayor kind of reminds me of the Jaws mayor a little bit.
Reminds you of what?
The Jaws mayor.
Yeah, I would say that's a fair comparison. I think he's just like the fact that he's always concerned about money and like he's eating at the mall and stuff, and
that moment where everyone's running into the mall and that he's like, if they build it, they will come.
Yeah, just like
and then later on, it's just like, what the hell is going on? Look behind you!
How kind of out of touch he is with the rest of what the town actually wants. Feels like a common scenario in a lot of places.
Yeah, so that's fun.
Yeah.
All right. Any memorable set pieces for you? Any? We already talked about the BMX chase or the motorbike chase, which I still maintain is the peak of the movie because of how 2000s it is.
Yeah. I really enjoy the scene with the big spider knocking over the trailer. There's a lot of like visual work there with
definitely,
where they don't say anything for a while and they're telling a story via image, but they make it feel pretty real and like it's a scary scenario.
I feel like that was definitely the most suspenseful scene in the movie, and I feel like it was also the scene where the CGI actually looked the most realistic because I really like the look. I like the look of the tarantulas in this movie a lot. Mm-hmm. I think the tarantulas in this movie visually really hold up.
Yeah.
All right. And then you mentioned the mall, of course. That's obviously like Dawn of the Dead and other 80s and 70s survival movies of the same ilk. Yeah. I like how the first act of this movie is Goosebumps. Second act is Dawn of the Dead. And then once they go into the mines, it almost becomes kind of like a like a Hellraiser or something like that.
Yeah, or Nightmare on Elm Street kind of deal.
Right. Or just like, I mean, I know it's not the same thing, but like, it's Hellraiser with spiders,
Yeah.
Kind of.
I'm a little bit surprised that like. Right. Yeah. I'm a little bit surprised that this movie got in so many of those like little references, because a lot of times stuff like this doesn't really get made. Like for a long time, the horror, it's either like low budget and they do everything like found footage type stuff. Mm-hmm. After Blair Witch came out, like that rapidly accelerated into like one of the top genres of horror movies. Oh, yeah. Or it's like, the prestige, like heavy duty stuff like The Conjuring or, stuff like that, where it's, they're trying really hard to be this like, cinematic terror and they're using all these visual tricks and stuff. Like it can still be really enjoyable to watch more of that campy stuff. Mm-hmm. And this movie kind of defied, its own era essentially to be that. So I'm surprised the movie got made in general, just because that type of movie wasn't really being made at this time.
No, I hear you. I feel like the only reason this movie got made was because this was made in a time where like CGI was like more the rage than it is now. Like this was made in a time where CGI was like legitimately like the big game-changing thing that everyone wanted to see. Yeah. And so I remember stuff like, like The Mummy Returns just being like a huge blockbuster. Not a great movie by any means, but like, oh my God, they fused Dwayne The Rock Johnson's body with a scorpion bottom. Oh my God, like that kind of shit was legitimately like really, really mind blowing back in the day. I remember it was for me as a kid, at least. Mm-hmm. And of course, this was going off of, Jurassic Park and T2 kind of being the big watersheds for CGI. But this movie gets right what a lot of other movies that try and imitate those two get wrong. Yeah. In that it puts the practical effects in. It's not just CGI. It's a lot of CGI, but it does do the legwork, pun intended, with the practical effects.
Yeah. That's what makes the best effects, in my opinion, is when you're not just doing one or the other. You're doing a combination of the two. I think that's your strongest effect every time.
Absolutely.
You do something to, create the effect in the real world, and then you augment what's already there. You're building upon something rather than creating something from scratch and asking it to, blend seamlessly with what you already have.
Yeah. So, man, I mean, it was such an interesting. I feel like we're getting kind of on a side tangent here with like the early 2000s, but
Sure.
it's fine because this movie is a product of its time with the early
Yeah.
2000s. So I mentioned other movies of the same ilk. I would say Evolution is kind of the same ilk, except Evolution was sort of like a take on like the B alien movies of the time.
Hmm.
Whereas this was a monster movie. Evolution was more of a, kind of like a riff on like bad sci-fi movies.
Yeah. And I mean, there were tons and tons of like Sci-Fi Channel original stuff around this
Yeah.
era that were, Monster of the Week adventures with clunky CGI and, D-list actors doing their best to be afraid of them. But, that's I guess that's never really stopped, has it? It's probably still going on. I just haven't watched it in a while.
I think the rate of actor has gotten higher, but they're still clunkily trying to be afraid of them. um, yeah, you know what movie from 2002? Now that you bring up other movies that would never get made these days, I really hope that you're familiar with this one because it's so up my alley. Kung Pao Enter the Fist.
Yes. Yeah, I actually know somebody who worked on that movie doing practical effects and stuff.
Oh my god, Jacob, that is, oh god, I can't tell you how many like late nights with friends I spent like watching that and quoting that. Oh my
Yeah.
god.
As a teenager, it's extremely quotable.
Yeah.
There's some stuff in there that's like, vaguely problematic and stuff these days, but like
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, but
hasn't aged super well, but yeah, at the time it was very funny. I totally agree.
but I mean, like, just the approach of just like, okay, we're gonna fucking take this pre-existing martial arts movie that plays it straight, lip sync it to just absolutely make it ridiculous, and on top of all that, we're gonna have like ridiculous like CGI tongues and cow fights and aliens and shit like that. Oh man.
Yeah.
Just product, man, the early 2000s really were a really interesting time, especially for me because I was growing up you were like a late teenager. I was actually just coming of age in the early 2000s. So I was like, like 11, 12, 13 in the early 2000s. So it was really interesting for me because I was actually just starting to kind of come into my own with, forming my own tastes and everything. So very, very interesting era to kind of come into my own with my own tastes.
Yeah.
All right. So back onto Eight-Legged Freaks. Are there any other set pieces that you want to bring up? Any other big kind of moments or anything?
I do like the mine a fair bit as well. Like, I feel like they do a good job, concealing a lot of like, set fakiness. There's a lot of mine sets in movies that look very fake, and this one does not. In particular, that last scene with, where he's getting Gladys and, peeling her out of the stuff, and then they find the Agua Mesa load. I feel like that, they do a good job with that set, making it feel real and not like a soundstage.
Yeah, definitely.
That's one that a lot of other movies of this caliber wouldn't pull off.
Right. Oh man. Because for example, a good example of that is like the TV show Gotham. Jacob, I swear to God, Dragon and I watched through like 6 seasons of that mess. And it's like there were maybe like 3 different sound stages that they used for warehouses that just kept getting repeated over and over and over. And I'm like, all right, guys, you're not even trying with your set design here. This is ridiculous. And yeah, you're right. You're right. Good set design can really go a long way.
Yeah. I watched an episode of that and I was like, this isn't for me. So that's kind of my feelings on that show.
Oh man. I mean, to tell you the truth, the reason why Dragon and I kept up with it is specifically because it was so like, what the fuck are they doing with this? We like as Batman fans, we have to cover this.
Yeah.
Like, this is bonkers.
Yeah.
Like, it was never a situation of like, oh man, this is high drama and I can't wait to see what happens next.
Yeah.
But yeah, you mentioned the mine and peeling the webs. I want to talk about that because that is some excellent makeup work.
Yeah.
Really creepy stuff. Just the layers of different web that they have to get to, and the fact that you can still like kind of see your mouth through the different layers and everything. Really good stuff. Really good practical stuff right there.
Yeah.
Right. Well, at the end of the day, Jacob, this movie there's not really a ton to discuss with this. It's a very simple monster movie, right?
Yeah. In a lot of ways, it really is.
Do you want to talk about maybe some of the homages that I might not have gotten?
Trying to think if there's like a specific moment.
I'm sure you're way more like deep cut into these sort of movies that this movie.
I feel like there's one specific moment that like kind of stuck out as like, a fun twist on an effect. I don't know if it's specific to a movie that they were going for or not, but just like an effect. The scene where the cat goes in the wall and like the deputy is trying to get it out, and then the cat like has like its face and paws like imprinted, and you can see the spider and stuff imprinted, like would never ever happen in real life. It's very cartoony. But like I wondered if that had to, kind of some of the effects that you see with like hands and faces coming out of walls in horror movies and stuff like that. Something like that could be kind of a twist on the trope.
I also kind of got almost like a Tom and Jerry vibe out of that, to tell you the truth.
Yeah.
But that, by the way, that image of the cat coming through the wall, that's got to be one of the best images in this movie.
Yeah. Yeah, certainly one that I had forgotten and was delighted to see. It was very funny.
Right. Let's see. I'm trying to look and see if there's any tidbits. This is based on a 1997 short film entitled Larger Than Life. Yeah. One of the things we kind of touched on, but I want to kind of just like underline a little bit more, is I do really like the small town vibe of this movie.
Yeah.
I feel like they came up with a really good name for the town, Prosperity, Arizona, a town that does not exist, but I love the name.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm just a big fan of movies in general that like, they feel like they take place away from the hustle and bustle of like an average everyday town or city. Like this really does. You do get the vibe that this is kind of a close knit community, and there's just something comfortable about that. I don't know.
Yeah, I would definitely agree. It definitely feels like a movie that's easy to kind of lose yourself to. Mm-hmm. It's not trying to be too complicated or trying to be more than it knows it is.
Sure.
Which is always a charming quality in movies for me.
Absolutely. All right. Any particular favorite spiders?
I love the one that punches. I don't remember what it's called, but that one cracks me up every time.
Just the sound effect.
Yeah. Oh man. Yeah. I mean, all the designs are decent. The jumping spiders are fun, and like I do really like the kind of sound effects that they created, because like spiders don't make noise. Like they can release air from their bodies, but they don't have lungs like we do. So like,
right.
There's no way they're gonna make noises. But in this one, they have kind of little like squeaks and burbles and stuff that they're doing.
Speaking of which,
the
voices of the spiders actually, Rob Paulsen, Kevin Michael Richardson, and Of course, Frank Welker.
Oh,
I mean, I'd be shocked if Frank
yeah.
Welker wasn't involved somehow, but...
What a joy.
Right.
What a joy.
And it's just it warms my heart to see those guys getting work in like a major studio movie too.
Yeah.
Fucking Scoob. Scoob.
Has that become like a meme with you and Dragon now?
Yes, it has. I mean, Dragon didn't like the movie either, but I particularly have a strong distaste for it. Anyways. All right, Jacob, any other little bits that we want to hit on before we sign out here?
I mean, in terms of like lasting impact, I don't know if this really has anything. You know, I don't think it really
has more impact than it does, because I feel like I'd like to see more movies in the same vein.
Yeah.
But unlike other movies that I mentioned, like Kung Pao or even Evolution, I feel like those movies still kind of have their fans. You know, like they're not like big hits or anything, but they have their fans. This movie, I feel like this review right here might be one of the only reviews for this movie on the internet, honestly. Like,
well, if the director ever sees it, you know, hey, just know that we're fans, and if you want to do another movie, we're available. So how about that?
I mean, I do like covering obscure stuff though, because, like I said, I feel like this movie really should have gotten more attention than it did, just because it does do a really good job of having likable characters in a small town atmosphere, and it does do a good job of blending the practical and the CGI effects.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it's a shame that this movie did kind of just come and go.
Yeah, there's so much stuff that ages really poorly these days. When we got to the scene with like Scarlett and her boyfriend, like I was worried, like, oh no, this is gonna get gross. But then, like, you know, she like immediately says like, "Here's my boundary," and he crosses it, and then she tases him. Perfect. Normal things.
I still thought it was gross that he, like, the thing I thought was gross was like after she turns him down, he's like, "Come on, babe, I'm just trying to cop a feel." I'm like, oh no.
Yeah. But they're showing how wrong he is in thinking that, which like another movie might not have done.
And then he spends the rest of the movie getting fucking chased by the jumping spiders on his motorbike. Yeah. All right. So yeah, any other points?
I feel like we've covered most of the great aspects of this movie. But yeah, I like the Gladys, the old lady character. Her characterization's pretty fun, even though she doesn't do a whole lot in the movie. Yeah.
All right.
All around decent indie flick. Okay,
so all around a nice lean, mean podcast, Jacob. I'm actually a fan of when we can get them in under 45 minutes. It's I feel like it makes a manageable listening experience for the viewer. So good job on our part, I guess. So Jacob, next time on SummerWeen, we're going to be reviewing my personal favorite episode of Gravity Falls. I don't know how you feel about it at all. For all I know, you could be like, Tiki, this episode's tremendously overrated, but but we're going to be talking about Not What He Seems, which I think is the high point of Gravity Falls. We have to get a Gravity Falls in there somewhere, because
absolutely,
we had to get a Gravity Falls in there somewhere because, you know, it is Summerween after all.
Yeah. So. My biggest question is, do I need to get a Jack-O-Melon?
Ooh. You know what? If you want to go through the effort of making one, then I'd gladly show it off on camera. I mean, I don't even know if it's physically possible to make.
I would assume it is. I mean, it's probably similar to making a jack-o'-lantern.
Probably.
But you have to do a little bit more scooping.
I'd be very curious to see that project, Jacob.
Okay. Yeah. Well, we'll see. We'll see if time and money allows.
Right. Because you do basically have to like waste a whole watermelon, so
see if I can make some watermelon lemonade out of it or something.
Yeah, right. All right, well, folks, the trick-or-treat candy has run dry, and the back to school is right around the corner. It's time to wash off the sunscreen and pack away the fake blood. Be sure to check back next time to find out what else is in store this fine and fiendish SummerWeen. Do 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 do.